listening to Phantasm Podcast, a horror death metal podcast for the old school. Join your hosts Corey Gorechrist and Dr. Vincent West as they stuff horror movie reviews and death metal interviews all in one body bag. Listen on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, and like on Facebook. And head over to outlandermedia.net for more.
Hey, this is Dave.
And this is Brett from Revocation.
You're listening to the Phantasm Podcast.
Phantasm.
Dr. Vincent West, medical doctor, here with the Phantasm Podcast, and I'm here with two gentlemen that I've wanted to talk to for some time now. A lot of fan requests for you guys. Here we go. We're here with Revocation. We're here with Brett and Dave. How are we doing?
Doing great.
Hey,
awesome. Thank you guys for doing this so much. We really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
And you got the new album coming out. The Outer Ones comes out September 28th through Metal Blade Records, and we're going to do track by track with these two gentlemen here today for you guys from Revocation. So here we go.
All right.
The first track, Of Unworldly Origin.
Sure. So it's inspired by... The whole record has a Lovecraftian kind of vibe to it. So that song is inspired by one of Lovecraft's short stories, Dreams in the Witch House. Essentially kind of classic sort of witch folklore, but, you know, through his own... Lovecraftian way that he is so great in crafting these dark stories. So I took inspiration from that and kind of did my own thing with it. We did a music video for that recently. That was super fun. We had Brett dressed up like a colonial pirate or something.
Yeah. Covered in blood.
Yeah,
it was nice.
How was that blood?
It was
tasting,
Brett? Disgusting.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't have to taste any of that.
No,
did you?
I just had to just breathe in whatever weird dust and shit was in the attic at that.
Oh yeah, I had left by that point in time.
Yeah,
that seemed grimy.
It was fun.
Man, hey, we all got some on that one.
Yeah, it's a good time.
That's amazing. Track 2, That Which Consumes All Things.
Another song directly inspired by one of Lovecraft's stories. This one's I took inspiration from The Color Out of Space, which is a lesser known Lovecraft tale. A lot of people associate like Cthulhu and stuff like that with Lovecraft, rightfully so, obviously. But he wrote so many different stories, and that one was kind of cool because for me, I can't, I'm not inside his head, obviously, but like it's kind of like his take on a ghost story, I want to say, because the creature in that is just this amorphous cloud, right? There's no real form to it, and he never references it in any other story. So it's kind of like this cosmic ghost, which is kind of cool. So I took some inspiration from that one, and then like overall musically, it's just a fucking heavy, dark song. I don't know, Brett, what do you get to say about it?
I like it a lot, dude. Yeah,
great,
very well done. I had a good time tracking it. Can't wait to play it live.
Oh yeah,
hyped up.
Track 3, Blood Atonement.
Next.
That's one of Dan's songs. It's cool. It adds a really awesome dimension to the record. There's a cool, clean break in that. I remember when we were first writing it. When we were first writing the record, Dan showed me that part, and it was like much shorter. And I was like, "Oh, you gotta extend this out. This is like so cool, and this is like just what the record needs." Like the record has a lot of different elements, but it was, in my opinion, missing that kind of weird, cool, spacey, clean section that we've had on several records. So. He really fleshed it out, and the whole song, to me, it really kind of takes you on a journey because there's so many different peaks and valleys in that song. Lyrically, I took inspiration from a book by Michael Gilmore called "Shot in the Heart." So it's one of the songs that's not really directly related to anything Lovecraft at all, but essentially it's one of the tenets of Mormonism is that in order, if some sins are basically so heinous that like not even Jesus Christ will forgive you, so you have to literally like atone with like blood. So if you were to kill someone in a brutal way with a knife, you couldn't be hung for that crime. Like you'd have to actually be like murdered in sort of a similar, or executed, I should say, in a similar way where your blood is actually spilling into the soil in order to achieve, forgiveness or in order to fully repent for your sin. That's not what the book is about. The book's about one of the first guys that they brought the death penalty back for in Utah, but he grew up in a Mormon family, so that whole element of blood atonement and Mormonism kind of is a theme that's present throughout the whole book, and it's a true story. It's a super interesting
check it out.
book. So that's where I got some inspiration. That's like a very, very moving book. It's super sad and really, really visceral. But I took that one kind of small element of Mormonism that I learned about from that book and kind of decided to craft a whole song around it. So hopefully the dark, brooding lyrics match the dark, brooding music that Dan came up with.
I think it does, outside looking in. Yeah. I think Dan had some really powerful contributions on this record, and just watching the two of these guys work together, both musically and with the lyrical ideas and concepts, really always goes hand in hand.
Excellent.
It's been that way for a long time.
Great. And then that's killer. Track 4, Fathomless Catacombs.
Sure. This one again has a lot of. This one takes the listener on a journey, and the lyrics of it are very much a story that's sort of moving in like chronological order, right? So it's not inspired by anything, by any of Lovecraft's works, but I sort of took inspiration more in the Lovecraft's writing style for that one as far as the lyrics go. So it's about 3 grave robbers that are in search of these sort of untold riches in this like cursed church, but what they don't realize is there's actually no luminous tomb down there, and it's all just like a big trap. So like when you go in search of this treasure, you end up just sort of getting lost in the labyrinth below the church and lost in the catacombs, sort of doomed to roam eternally. So I try to have the music when I was writing the lyrics, like that was just sort of the imagery I was getting, and musically speaking, it's got like a cool thrash metal vibe, but there's also some weird sort of black metal parts to it. The bridge section almost reminds me of like something like Opeth would do, like, and like there are more like rockin' parts. So it was a really fun song, and it had like several revisions because I wanted to get the flow of it like just right. So when I finally kind of got the song structure down, the lyrics kind of flowed pretty easily for me because it was very much of a storytelling kind of vibe that I was getting.
Excellent. And of course, track 5, The Outer One's the title track.
Yes, yeah, that's a heavy one.
It's probably a fan favorite in the band, I think, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you showed us that, we're like, okay, all right.
It works out nicely sometimes when the title track is also one of the funner songs to play live. So we've been opening up our set currently with that song, and there was the second single that we released. It's just like super heavy. I love Brett's bass lines on it. It's like just the low end is just super present, and just adds to the overall beefiness of that one. So it's a bruiser for sure.
It sums up the vibe, man. I think for pretty much the first time we were 100% on the same page with everything going into this record as a band. Like, we're doing this, this should be that, and everything that everybody brought up was like an immediate yes. It's tight.
Track 6, I'm probably going to say that wrong. It's on Vantius?
Oh, Vanitas?
Vanitas.
Yep,
Excuse me, I said it wrong.
Yeah. Vanitas. This is another sort of departure from the Lovecraft theme. Although I did use some inspiration again from Lovecraft's writings in terms of some of the lyrical content. Vanitas is coming from like the Flemish Renaissance. It's essentially a still life painting, but it has a macabre element to it. So it would be like, let's say, like a bowl of fruit, but there'd be like a skull at the same time, like on the table, present, or like some sort of depiction of death. Basically, what the artists were doing with Vanitas paintings were sort of showing the futility of life and like earthly delights, and like not to sort of care so much about that's where like the word vanity comes from, basically, like being vain and focusing too much on this life because you're going to die and there's going to be like the afterlife. Now whether you believe in an afterlife or not, it's obviously contemplating one's own mortality is just a super interesting sort of thought experiment to have, whether you're an atheist or deeply religious. So that song lyrically is about that. Right around the time that I was writing those lyrics, my grandfather had passed away, so I think that the sort of topic of, I was very close with him, so the topic of death and mortality was just kind of on my mind. And music is an outlet for all things, whether they're good or bad. That's, I think, with metal music in particular, it has that wonderful alchemy of being able to turn negative emotions into something that's hopefully positive, right? No matter how brutal it can be, it's music that people are listening to because they enjoy it, right? So I was able to kind of filter some of those negative, dark sort of emotions into a lyrical process that was cathartic for me. And musically, it's a different song in the record. I feel like it's a necessary part of the album as a whole. I think it adds a new element to our sound, and it's actually one of my favorite sort of tracks on the record. It just has like a different vibe to it, but it's moody, and I think it brings out a different aspect of our sound, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool.
Thank you.
Track 7, I'm going to let you...
Exit Hello?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. That's the instrumental track on the record. We always like to have one instrumental track per record, just to kind of break it up and do something different. Also, when you're writing lyrics, you're thinking, or at least I'm thinking about, verse, chorus structures, even if we try to disguise them in different ways, that's still kind of part of my thought process when I'm writing a song with lyrics. So when I'm doing an instrumental, it's sort of like all bets are off and the structure can be whatever the fuck I want it to be, which is just nice and an extra element of freedom when we're writing. It's the Latin translation is basically from out of nothing. So where does any sort of idea, like when it comes to music, come from? I mean, we spend so much time honing our craft, but then when you sit down to like write a riff or write a song, I always find like my best material comes out of like me not thinking about anything in particular, and it just kind of hits me from whatever the ether is that it comes from. Nice. So that's kind of my ode to, I guess, the creative process, and it's certainly a creative song in terms of the song structure. It might be one of my favorite instrumental songs we've ever done. What about you, Brett?
I would agree with that, and I like how you and Dan go to work on that one, man. It's cool. The rhythm section, when we were doing the rehearsals, like everyone's like, I need another minute working this part out, and I'm like, I'll play this song all day long. I get to kind of kick it on this one, and Ash was like, yo, me too, let's keep going, and these guys are just burning so hard.
Yeah, it's difficult to play on guitar.
Yeah, it's really technical, but it's cool to actually sit on the pocket pretty hard while these guys are just shredding, because I get to really hone in and listen to the ridiculous stuff that they're doing.
Nice.
Without stressing too hard on my own parts, man.
That's great. Track 9, Luciferious.
Sure, yeah, Luciferous.
Said it wrong too. Thank you, kids.
I don't even know why I come up with these incredibly tongue-twisting.
No, it's great. It's great. It's just for me, I'm just like, and another one Dr. West fucks up in front of his fans, in front of his people that he looks up to.
There'll be a quiz after the interview.
Yeah, exactly.
By us. The spelling bee as well,
and I will fail that too.
This was sort of I like writing using religious iconography. We've done that before on different songs. Communion from our last record, and Arbors of the Apocalypse was a song about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This one was more about the Garden of Eden. Lucifer, sort of one of the translations of his name is like light bringer, right? So there's a certain element in that story when you read about the Garden of Eden. It's a strange allegory because they eat from the tree of knowledge, and God sort of punishes them for that, which is such an interesting concept in religion, that you'd be punished for seeking knowledge. And in many ways, when you look at the Inquisition and rebellion against the church, there is that element of trying to sort of clamp down on sort of self-discovery, and just you have to sort of follow these rules. And obviously, metal is a huge middle finger to the status quo in general. So I wrote that song just sort of about that allegory of the Garden of Eden, but did it in my own way. So hopefully it's not super heavy-handed, and there's a little bit more. You can maybe take different meanings from it, I guess, just like any sort of allegory, right?
Nice.
Dan wrote that song musically, so I think it showcases definitely his love of black metal for sure, but also sort of his love of like D beat and just sort of like ripping ass like riffs in general. Like that one's like definitely touches on like a lot of bases like stylistically, and this is probably one of those things that only I think about. But on the outro solo, like I've always been a fan of like rock and some of like the 80s metal and stuff like that. So like it never really happens in metal, but there's it happens all the time in like rock and like in like 80s metal where like the final chorus will come in, but there'll be like a guitar solo underneath it, which like I don't really often hear while it's going on. So I was like, I want to do that with metal though, and like have this like ripping ass chorus, but then like a guitar solo comes in, and like just for an added extra layer that probably no one else will get with me. But I'm talking about it now, so maybe some people pick up on it. Like I threw in a couple like gospel-y style licks, so like my most sort of gospel style phrasing on the record is over our most satanic song, which I get an extra kick out of. Yeah.
Great, that's fun. Track 9, A Starless Darkness.
Sure, yeah, this is the album closer. Definitely, to me, the most epic song on the record. It kind of has two parts. This sort of really sort of spacey, open first section. The verse riff almost reminds me of something like Isan would write or something like that, and then it's got like sort of this clear sort of pivot where it gets into a more faster, upbeat, aggressive section. Lyrically, this one doesn't have a Lovecraftian influence either, but at the same time has a sort of sci-fi quality to it, so I guess we could kind of put it under that umbrella. Like sometimes when I listen to theoretical physicists do podcasts and whatnot, I always find it interesting like how influenced they are by like Star Trek or Star Wars or sci-fi in general, and a lot of these guys are coming up with, I think, some of there's a certain imagination behind like theoretical physics, right? Because it's something that you can't prove, but it's just something that like they can postulate is true based on like math or models that they can sort of generate, using computers. And I think that the kickstarting of that imagination, probably what got a lot of those guys into that shit in general, was just the love of science fiction, right? Lovecraft himself actually wanted to be a chemist before he was a writer.
It's amazing. I didn't know that.
So, Starless Darkness is the theoretical, the concept in theoretical physics of the heat death of the universe. There's kind of two ways scientists postulate. One is that there was the Big Bang, right, and all matter is expanding out, but eventually gravity will take over and will pull the universe back together, and it will get infinitely and infinitely smaller into like this like supermassive black hole essentially, and then it will combust again and explode, and life will renew. The kind of concept of how many times have we had this conversation right here, like are we living in this sort of closed infinite loop of Big Bang, explosion, contraction, Big Bang again, and it just goes on for infinity. However, there's actually no scientific evidence to support that whatsoever. The universe isn't contracting like they would expect it would. It's actually expanding due to dark energy forces that and that's a force that they don't actually have any idea like why that exists at all. So the universe isn't contracting, it's expanding, and it's actually accelerating in its expansion. So due to that, scientists are like, oh, we're not going to have another Big Bang. What's actually going to happen is stars are going to get further and further apart. The galaxies are going to get further and further apart, and eventually stars are going to run out of star fuel and just kind of burn out. And trillions of years from now, eventually even black holes will lose the radiation that keeps them sort of churning and going, and everything will just become this sort of lightless, frozen graveyard where nothing will ever sort of grow again, which is super depressing, and I thought it would be a great way to end the sci-fi saga of the Outer Ones with a totally dead and lifeless universe that perhaps the Outer Ones will preside over, or they'll move on to a different dimension entirely. So that was
That's the most brilliant description of a song we've ever had on Phantasm.
Yeah.
Nothing can top that.
It's actually one.
No, it's seriously. I'm a huge nerd, so I was just like, oh, that's even cooler. I love this band. Yeah, so that was fantastic.
Thank you.
The Outer Ones is available from Metal Blade Records September 28th. Thank you guys so much for this. I really appreciate it.